Hello and welcome. This is the final result that you will have by finishing this tutorial. The scene was inspired by the Enola Holmes movie on Netflix. I thought it was really interesting and would be a fun project to teach people how to do. The completed project scene, all the files that you need to do the tutorial, and the completed scene are all available completely for free on my website, learn-blender3d.com. Okay, I have Blender 2.9 open. I'm just going to left click away from the splash screen, and we're actually not going to delete the default cube. I'm just going to left click on this lamp, hit X, and then enter, and that will delete. Alright, so I'm just going to left click on the default cube. I'm going to hit my numpad 1. If you don't have a numpad, follow those instructions and then you'll use your 1 key. And I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit G for move, Z to do it on the Z axis. And if I hold control, put my mouse here and left click, that means the box is now directly on this axis. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode and I'm just going to middle mouse click to orbit around just so we can see this cube better. Then I'm going to hit N to open up my right panel, and it looks like I need to click on item, so make sure you're clicked on item here, and we're just going to change the size. So it's really nice to work with real world values, and so our little Scrabble piece or a little letter piece is small, so it's 19 mm for millimeters, 19 mm, tab 19 mm, tab 4 mm, enter. And so it's really small, we can't really see it, but the key to the left of the 1, I believe it's the tilde. If you click on that tilde key and then view selected, it'll zoom into whatever you have selected. So now we're nice and up close to our little piece, and this is a good start. Alright, and we want this to look more interesting. If I just middle mouse around, you can see it's just still really sharp edges. So if I click on the wrench, that's the modifiers. And if I left click on add modifier and click bevel, it'll start beveling this object. So for the amount, I'm going to click in here and go to 0.2. And for segments, I'm going to go up to 5. And so let me just middle mouse click around, so just checking the shape. Yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting, nice shape that should work for what we're doing. You can see here the shading, so let's right click and click on shade smooth. Let's also left click on this guy here, open up normals and click this auto smooth. I actually don't think, I'm in the middle mouse around, I don't think it's actually making a difference in this case, so it might have been pointless, but I think it's looking pretty good. Go ahead and save. Okay, let's spend a moment to work on our scene. So I'm going to hit Z and click on rendered to go to our rendered view. Not really anything interesting going on. We need to click on this world icon. And if you're in Blender 2.9, you want this dot. If you're in an earlier version, a dot might be over there, but I'm going to click on the dot next to color and click on environment texture. I'm going to click open. And if you go to the assets folder, double click on this ballroom. So that's going to add in this scene to light our scene. And since our scene's kind of dark, I'm gonna go to 0.6 just to make it a little darker, as if we're kind of in like a candle lit or just a darker room for this. Let's see, what else do we need to do? I also want to click on the camera, and let's just go ahead and enable some of these settings. So ambient occlusion is just gonna add shadows. We're not really seeing the effect now, but we're definitely gonna want that. Screen space reflections, I believe we will want. I just open it up. Let's just close the half res trace. And then under shadows, I'm going to click on high bit depth and I'm going to close it up. So that will just make sure our scene looks better as we progress. So now we need to actually add the letter onto this tile. I no longer need this right box. So I'm going to hit N to close my right panel. And let's also just jump to, let's see, shading. So it's really small right now, so I have it selected still. I'm gonna hit that tilde key and click view selected just to zoom in here. And by default, I'm gonna hit Z. It does material preview. Let's click on rendered. And let's see. So with your mouse in the bottom half, I'm gonna hold shift, hit A, click on search. I'm gonna type in image, hit enter. And I'm gonna click open, go into the assets, and I want letters are diffuse. Double click on that. Click and drag the color to the base color. It's not set up properly yet, but you are seeing what we've got going here. And let me just shift middle mouse click down here. I'm gonna left click on this guy, hold shift, hit D to duplicate. I'm gonna left click, put it here. Click on the folder icon. This time I wanna double click on the bump. I'm gonna hold shift, hit A. Let's search for bump and place it here. So I wanna take the color into the height, I believe, and then the normal into the normal. And so, if you're familiar with normal maps, bump maps are similar, but they're black and white, and that's just what I made in this case. So now we have it applied. We just needed to actually UV unwrap this to have it look right. Okay, so to do that, let's click on the UV editing tab. And again, I'm gonna hit this with my mouse on the right side. I'm gonna hit the tilde key and click view selected. So I'm zoomed in here. I'm also gonna hit Z and render to be in rendered view. And let's see, I'm gonna zoom out here. And so you can see by default, so we had a cube, it unwrapped this as a cube. It's not exactly what we want though. So I'm gonna click, this is our face select mode. I'm gonna left click and get this top face. I'm gonna hit U and mark seam. And so now this is separated out from the rest of the UV. So with my mouse on the left side now, I'm gonna hit A to select everything, G, and I want the letter H, that's the first letter we get. And I'm gonna hit S for scale and bring this down. And so to make this a little bit easier, I'm gonna put my mouse on the right side, hit my numpad 7, just so I can see this really easily. And then on my left side, I'm just gonna zoom in middle mouse, then shift middle mouse click to pan over. And I just need to get this positioned how I want. So it's not centered properly, so something like that looks better. Maybe if I hit S, bring it in just so I can see. Yeah, it actually looks like it was matching up pretty well. So now here's a little bit of decision where how close do you want your letter to the edge? I think something like this is pretty good. Maybe I'll hit S and bring it out a bit, but actually I'm gonna hit escape. I'm gonna leave it like this for now, but you can play around that with your yourself. One thing you'll notice though, there's some weirdness going on here, and that's because we need to actually move other parts of the UV. So if I hit select invert, instead of just having that front face, if I middle mouse around, I have all the other faces. And so if I zoom out over here, you can see all of these faces are actually touching letters. So we don't want that. I'm gonna hit A to select it all. I'm gonna hit S for scale 0 and hit enter. So it smashed all those UVs in just this little dot. And then you can hit G and move it around. So you just wanna make sure it's in this empty space and not touching any letters. If it's on a letter, it'll be black. So if I tab out of edit mode, I had my mouse over here, middle mouse around, you can see here that we have our little letter and it's got this little bump to add some fake dimension to it, and it's looking pretty good. Go ahead and save. Okay, so now it's just a matter of making more of these. So to make things easier for us, I'm gonna tab into edit mode and left click just to get this top face and tab out of edit mode. And I'm actually gonna go about to this layout and then hit numpad 7 to go to my top view, scroll out a bit, and I'm gonna hold shift, hit D for duplicate, I'm gonna hit G and X, G for move and X to keep on the X axis, just to move it over here. And I should actually have stayed in the UV editing. So I'm gonna go back to UV editing and I'm gonna hit numpad 7 from here, and then shift middle mouse click and move over. And now we just need the other letters. So in my case, I'm spelling hello. So I'm gonna hit G, move this over to the E. Oh, and I did not realize that things are upside down. The H is symmetrical, so it didn't come up. So I'm gonna hit R for rotate 180 and hit enter. And so that just makes sure it's facing the correct direction. And I'm just gonna zoom in, shift middle mouse click, and just make sure this is centered pretty nicely. I'm actually gonna hit escape. You do want to keep the scale the same. I was just doing that to kind of see if this is centered or not. And I think that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode, zoom out here. I'm going to hold shift, hit D, and I'm going to hit X to keep it on the X axis. Tab into edit mode. This time, what do we need? We need an L. So I'm going to shift middle mouse click. I'm going to hit G, left click, G, bring this over, get it into position. You could spend a little bit more time making sure it's exactly center, but I want to keep things fast for you all. Tab out of edit mode. So we just need another hold shift, hit D, duplicate, X, and left click, so that L is fine. I'm gonna hold Shift hit D, duplicate X, left click, tab into edit mode. This time I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna hit G and X, so I'm moving just on the X. Get this centered up nicely. Left click, tab out of edit mode, and yeah, now I am gonna go to layout, zoom out a bit, shift middle mouse click, and I'm just gonna see if I'm happy with how this is looking. And yeah, I think this is looking pretty nice. We can play with the exact spacing in a moment, but I'm just making sure I think these all line up well and look right. And yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and save. Okay, now I wanna add in the table just so we can start playing with our composition and see how everything really looks. So I'm gonna hold Shift hit A, hover over mesh and click on plane. Let me just scroll out here so that, this is way bigger than we need it. So I'm just hit S for scale, bring it down. Maybe something like this will be good. It doesn't matter too much, but also just note, I'm just zooming in with my middle mouse, note that these are sitting right on the table perfectly, and that's because we set that up when we right in the beginning of the project. So that's looking pretty good. Now we just need to shade this thing. So let's click on shading, and let me see, click on new here. Didn't have a material yet, so that just gave the material. Shift middle mouse click so I can see all of this. Okay, so with the mouse on the bottom half, I'm gonna hold Shift hit A, click search, type in image, hit enter. I'm gonna left click with it up here, click open, go into assets, go into wood, and double click on the color and drag the color into the base color. So now if I middle mouse around and zoom out a bit, you can see we are getting this table, this wood texture. So let's expand on this a little bit. So I'm gonna left click on this guy, hold Shift hit D, duplicate, move it down. I'm gonna click this open, and this time I'll double click on the roughness. I'm gonna click and drag the color into the roughness here. And I'm gonna change this to non-color data. Okay. And then if I shift middle mouse click and go down, left click on this guy, hold Shift, hit D, bring it down, left click, click on the folder, and I'm gonna double click on normal this time. And let me Shift, hit A, search, type in normal, and get this normal map. Left click and put it here. I'm gonna click and drag normal into the normal, and I'm gonna take this color into the color here. And I actually want to change this sRGB to non-color data also. And let's see, is there anything else I want to do here? So we've got the normal map, we've got the roughness, and we've got the diffuse. Okay, so that's pretty good. So I want to alter this table a little bit. So I'm gonna left click on this guy, hit G, move it over to give myself some more space. If I hold Shift, hit A, type in, or click on search, type in bright, and there's brightness contrast. And if you just hover over this line and left click, it'll automatically connect them. And let's play with these values a little bit. So I'm gonna click on the brightness and do -0.1. So that made it way too dark. So let me see, maybe -0.01. That's not gonna do anything either. Oh, maybe I messed up, -0.01. Okay. And if you want to see it before and after, you click on this guy, hit M, mute on and off. So it's very faint. I might, let's see, -0.05. So maybe something like that. We'll see as we go on. And then this, let's see, the contrast, maybe -0.01, hit enter. That didn't do anything, -0.1. Because I want it to be less contrasty and darker. So maybe I'm just gonna even click and drag this. The values are a little different than they were when I was messing with this before. So that is darker. And I wanted to have less contrast. It was too distracting before. Maybe -0.1 was good. And then let me just do a before and after. So it actually looks a little bit more vibrant. I did want it to be darker. So maybe -0.2, that's just too much, -0.1. So yeah, just you can play with that value until you're happy with how the table looks here. I'm also gonna add in a hue saturation. So with my mouse down here, hold shift, hit A, click on the search, type in hue, hit enter, hover over this and left click. And let's see. So I think before I took the saturation down, so I don't know if it's necessary in this case, but just so you know, you can change the hue if you want to play with it. You know, if you want it to be subtle, unless you're trying to change it drastically. I'm gonna keep it at 0.5. Value is how bright and dark it is here also, and saturation is saturation. So I actually don't think it looks too bad at 1, but maybe we'll play with this as we work on our scene. We didn't change too much here, so if I left click and drag on these and hit M, I guess it just made it a little darker, and actually some of this pops out more. But this will be good for now. Just know that you can tinker with these to change the color and the brightness and contrast as you see fit, but this will be good for now. Before I forget, let's go to layout, and I'm also going to hit numpad 7 again. Actually, maybe not. I'm just going to scroll in with my middle mouse, and my middle mouse click to get closer to a perspective that we will end up using in the end. I think we're probably going to do something like this. And then let's go. Make sure you click on the camera icon, open up color management, and by default the look is none, which is the same thing as medium contrast. But let's put this up to medium high contrast so you can see the overall contrast is changing. Let's even go to high contrast. And then if you want to see very high contrast, we have that also. I'm going to put it at high contrast just to punch up our colors a bit and make the scene a little bit more dynamic. So I think that's looking better. And again, we can tweak this table coloring later. Alright, so now we just need more letters to fill out our scene. And you really can spell out whatever you want, but if you want to follow along with me, I'm doing hello, and I'm just going to make a bunch of other letters. So let's click on the UV editing. I'm already in my top view, which is nice. I'm going to hit Z and then rendered. It looks like I'm in edit mode on the table, so I'm going to tab to get out of edit mode in the table. And I'm just going to scroll my middle mouse out, click on any of these, left click, and then hold shift, hit D, move over, tab into edit mode. I believe I just have that face selected. Yep, that's correct. So I'm going to hit numpad 7 to go back to my top. And then you just want to start making more letters. So I'm going to hit G and X, and this is going to be an N. And then I can tab out of edit mode, hold shift, hit D, left click, and just keep doing this until you have as many letters as you want. I don't want to make you watch me do this, so I'm going to pause the video and come back once I've made a bunch of other letters. Alright, and as you can see, I added a bunch of other letters. And just one note, I did this all in top view just to make sure these all are sitting on the table. If you're in a perspective, you maybe could have moved them off the table. So I just want to note that. And yeah, so now we just need to start placing these and start working on our composition. Okay, so let's click on our layout tab and maybe just middle mouse around. Actually, I need to turn on my screencast keys. Let me do that real quickly. Okay, so I'm just middle mousing around, zooming out. So in the beginning, I didn't delete the camera. So we do have a camera in our scene. So if I hit numpad 0 or follow those directions to just use your 0 key, we're now looking through the camera. So I'm going to hit N and go to, let's see, what is it? Tool, no, under view, and click on this camera to view. So you're locking the camera to whatever you do with the viewport now. So if I just scroll in here, middle mouse, the camera's moving with how I move in my viewport. So I'm going to shift middle mouse click and get the hello pretty centered here. And then if you hold control and middle mouse click in, you can start zooming in and out here. So I'm just going to do that until, let's see, something maybe about like so. And then I'm just going to middle mouse around until I like the angle I'm at. So I definitely want to be top down, but I don't want to be perfectly top down. So I might middle mouse click and move it down a bit. And I'm going to shift middle mouse click just to center it a little bit. And I might pull it back out a little bit because I want to be able to see the surrounding table a decent amount. So I think something like that's good. You can have your own angle if you think something else would look a little better. I'm going to go with this. And then one thing to do is I usually like to go ahead and turn off the camera to view because you always forget you have it on, and then you middle mouse click around and you move your camera by accident. So now if I just hit numpad 0, I'm back in my camera and I can't screw it up. But if you want to tinker with the position, just click that back on, move it around, and then turn it back off. I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, and so to play with our composition and arrange things, I want to split our view. So if you hover your mouse up the top left here, click and drag over, we're going to have two views. I'm just going to go ahead and hit N to close that right panel, and then my mouse over here, N to close that right panel. And so this one I'm going to have be our camera, so I'm going to hit Z and click rendered. Zoom in a little bit so I can see this better. I'm also going to hit T just to close that box, make sure I can really see what the camera sees over here. And with my mouse on the right side, I'm going to hit numpad 7. And I'm just doing this so that, again, when I know I'm in this top view, I know I'm not moving things off the table. So I'm going to use this view to move around my tiles, and this view to actually see what I think about the composition. I may actually zoom out with middle mouse just a little bit. And so yeah, so now it's just a matter of placing these. And also, we're going to set up a final position of this hello. So let's just zoom in here, and let's just make this a little more interesting. So I'm just going to click on that one, left click, R to rotate, just move it over a little bit. Left click on this one, G to move it, left click to put that move there, maybe R, rotate this one a teeny bit. Just want to make it look like, it's not perfectly positioned, like someone did this by hand. Really, it's up to you. So I'm just clicking on things, R for rotate, left click. Sometimes I'm changing my mind with what I think, then G to move it. And this last one, maybe I make it even lower, maybe like that. Rotate it back in a little bit, G. And then you can hold Alt, hit A to deselect. And I'm just looking over here. I'm a little distracted by these other letters. But I do think this is pretty good. Maybe the H is a little close. I'm going to left click on the H, G, and just move it over a little bit. Hold Alt A to deselect. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good position for the hello. Let me just scroll out here, and let's just start placing some of these other tiles around. So I'm going to left click, and then really I'm just going to start sticking them in different places, and we can fine tune how it looks later. I do think too many is kind of distracting and it will get in the way of our animation, but too few, the scene's a little boring. So it's just a little process of figuring out how many you want where. So really, I'm just kind of freely moving these around at this point. There's not too much thought other than my spacing and just how many there are. Some of them can be closer, some can be further away. You also might want to think about like, oh, there's no vowels on this side, so maybe I'll take out this N, bring that off, and put this A into view. So yeah, I'm moving it in this top view, and I'm seeing my composition through the camera on the left side, and that might be enough letters. So let's start just fine-tuning this a little bit. I may just click on these. I'm gonna left click, shift left click. Oops, I got the camera, so I'm gonna hold Alt A to deselect. Left click, shift left click, make sure I get the letter. Shift left click, shift left click. I'm gonna hit G. I'm just gonna move these further away so they're not distracting me. And let's just start playing with some of these more. So I'm just gonna go through and now just rotate these. Rotate that back in, rotate this one a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna bring this one down more into the shot. This one can't be seen at all, so I'm definitely gonna move it down a bit. R to rotate. I'm just gonna continue doing this with our composition. And I may end up taking out some of these. Sometimes I think the scene did look better, more sparse. So like for this, for example, I might just delete this one. So I've got it selected. I'm gonna hit X and enter to delete it. Let's move this one up because we also need space. These letters, the hello is gonna fly in from the outside, and if there's too many blocking it, it'll just kind of make that process more difficult. R to rotate this guy, and it's nice to have some kind of on and off at the edge here. So I'm keeping that in mind. Maybe this one's gonna be really like that. Sorry, I should have done that over here. Let's see. So that's pretty good. I'm trying to see what I think about these two. I might select this P, I might move the P in a bit. Actually, I might even just get rid of that P. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna delete that one. I just wanna have space. I know the H is gonna fly in from over here, so I want some space. Left click on this R, maybe move this one to maybe like here, R to rotate. And yeah, this is really just preference and just, you know, working on your composition and what you think looks good. But I think something like this looks good. Let's see, this S could be rotated. Alt A to deselect. So we've got a decent amount in our scene. You know, I'm kind of thinking about where these all can fly in from. And yeah, I think there are enough spots. Like the H could come from anywhere over here. The E could probably come in from here. The L's, yeah. So there's definitely spots. So I think there's room, and I think the composition looks good, and so I'm happy with this. One thing I did forget though is I actually want to start with these letters backwards. So we could just keyframe these, but I think it'll be kind of confusing to animate backwards. So I'm just going to actually scroll in here, and just real quickly, I'm just going to left click on the O. What actually do I want to do? We could do kind of a, if I hold shift hit D to duplicate and then hit enter, I can shift left click on this H and then hit control L, and I want to click on object data. So now the H moved to, or that O became an H. So that actually worked. But now I just want to hide this one. So I'm going to left click on this H. I hit H to hide it. And then I'm going to left click on this O. So actually this time I want to left click on the H, then shift left click on the O, hold control L, click on object data. So now we've got this O in the right spot. We no longer need this O, so I'm going to left click on it, hit X and enter, and let's hold Alt H to unhide the H here. And then now I need to flip these two, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to left click on the L, shift D to duplicate, enter to keep it in the same position. And then I'm going to shift left click on the E, control L, click on object data. I can now left click on this E and hit H to hide it. And then this time I'm going to left click on the E, shift left click on the L, control L, and click object data. No longer need this L, so I can left click on it, X, enter, then hold Alt, hit H. And now we've got it backwards, H-E-L-L-O. And yeah, sorry I forgot about that in the first place, but it actually is really handy to learn that control L. It's really powerful. Definitely look into what you can do with that. It can be a huge lifesaver, especially if you got one material on one thing and you want on a bunch of other things. That's a great way to really quickly do that. So just a quick little tip there. Okay, so we're gonna actually get into the animating now. And one really big thing I wanna do is I want to click on the printer icon, and on the frame rate, I'm gonna put this up to 60 frames per second. Now, you know, so there's gonna be 60 frames per second, so it does mean the rendering is gonna take longer. But it's a pretty short scene, and there's not too much geometry going on, so your computer really should be able to handle it. If you have a really bad computer, you can drop the resolution down to 75% or 50% to help, but really it shouldn't be too bad. And the reason I'm using 60 frames per second is it's a really quick animation with motion blur, and I really want that to come across really clearly. So I think the extra frames is really going to make a difference. So I definitely would put it up to 60 frames per second. And again, if your computer struggles with that at all, or like how long it's going to take you, dropping this down to 50%, there's nothing wrong with that. It would still look really good on a cell phone and even good on a desktop computer still. But I'm going to leave it at 100% and 60 frames per second. Okay, so the position these are in is not their first position. So I want to jump ahead to frame 55, which is where I've timed out to be a pretty good speed of these flying in, and then keyframe all of these. So I am going to left click on this guy, hit N to bring up my right panel, make sure I'm clicked on item here, and I want to hit hover over rotation, hit I, hover over scale, or no, not scale, location and hit I. So we got location and rotation with the keyframe for the O. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do that for the rest of them. So I just left clicked on the L, I. Just going to continue doing that until all of these have keyframes. Okay, so now this is where they land. So starting at 0, and I'm just left clicking and dragging at here to scrub through my timeline, I want the tiles to sit still for a second before they fly in. So I'm not going to put the other keyframe at 0. Actually, let's see. I'm going to put the other keyframe at 30, I believe. So I'm going to put my mouse here. I'm at frame 30. And now I just need to start positioning where these actually will be at the start of the animation. Okay, so with my mouse on the right side, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit with my middle mouse. Shift middle mouse click to give myself some more space. And yeah, now I'm just going to start positioning these. So I'll left click on the O. I'm going to have this one. I'm going to hit G. I'm going to put it off frame, and you can see where our camera is. It's currently completely out of frame. I'm going to put it there. Maybe I'll hit R and even rotate a little bit so as it flies in, it kind of will unrotate itself. Hit I and I just to add those keyframes. So now if I go to 0 and scrub over, you'll see it'll stay still from 0 to 30, just to give the viewer eye a second to kind of see what's going on. And then it will start flying in and land into our final position like that. So now make sure you go back to frame 30, and we're going to keep doing the letters. Okay, so let's move on to the L. I'm going to left click on this L. We're on frame 30. I'm just going to hit G and bring it down. I don't want to do it too close to here because it'll run into the S. So I'm going to drag it to come from over here. And maybe this one's going to come from even further away. And just know that if it's further away, it's going to be flying in faster because it's around the same, it is the same amount of time. So that distance will mean it has to fly in faster. And that'll be just nice to have some different dynamic speeds so they all don't look exactly the same speed. So I might even move it a little bit further. And then I'm going to hit I to lock that in. I didn't do any rotation. Maybe I'll do just a little slight rotation and then hit I. So now again, if I scrub over, you see this fly in. It does get kind of close to that S there, but it doesn't hit it. So I'm happy with that. That should be good. Go back to frame 30. Left click on this other L. Let's see, let's have this one come from the top. So I'm going to hit G, move this up here. Maybe this one is in frame. Maybe it's just visible right there. I'm going to hit R just to rotate it a teeny bit. And then I'm going to hit I and I for both of these. And let's just keep going. I'm going to left click on this E. I'm still on frame 30. Hit G, bring this down. Maybe this one, the very edge of it will be visible. And then this one, let's all rotate it a little bit. I hit I and I. And the last one we got is this H. And let's G, let's have it come from over here. This one I think I'm gonna have out of frame also. Maybe even further away, like some, maybe like all the way over there. And I'm just gonna hit I and I. And yeah, we can play this back now. So this is how long our animation is, but our keyframes only go to here. Let's make this go to 90 for the moment. Hit enter. And now if I hit spacebar, we can preview this animation. So you can kind of see the different speeds they're coming in. I think maybe they could even come in a little faster. So you can also tweak this how you like. But I think this is looking pretty good here. And then I'm just going to hit spacebar to stop it. I'm just going to scrub through. I'm just going to make sure that none of the letters are intersecting with anything else at any point. As these come together, the E and the L looks, yep, right there, the E and the L do intersect. So I'm going to have to alter this a little bit. So let's go back to frame 30, and let's click on the L. I'm just going to hit G, and if it comes over from less of an angle, like more like over here, I think it's going to fix the issue. So I'm going to hit I, just to lock in those keyframes. Now if I scrub through again, we're not touching that T, and let's see if these L's and E hit each other or not. It's very close, and they do. So it wasn't enough. Let's see if we can move that L over a little bit. So I'm gonna left click on the L, hit G, move it over a bit like so. And let's do this. Hopefully this is gonna fix the issue. We're still just barely hitting each other. Maybe if I move the final position of the E a teeny bit. So the other keyframe's at 55. If I just left click on this E, and I'm just gonna zoom in here just so I can do this pretty closely. I'm gonna hit G, just move it over a teeny bit. And then I'm also gonna hit R to rotate. And let me lock these keyframes in. And let's see now, will they intersect now? It's just so close. So if I could get the L coming from less of an angle, that would really just solve the issue. So let's fix the L then. And it's gonna adjust our composition a little bit. So I'm gonna left click on this Y, hit G, move it over to give myself some more space. And I'm gonna left click on the L, and let's hit G, have it come from more like over here. And I think this time we should have it. Let's see. So we're coming in. There's enough space there, and bam. Okay, so that looks good. Let's just do, I'm gonna hold Alt, hit A to deselect. Let's just hit spacebar and watch this. So it holds for a second, lets the viewer see what's going on. They fly in. And yeah, it looks good. One thing you can do too, you could stagger when they hit a little bit, just to add some variety. Let's go ahead and stagger it. I do think it will just look better. So I'm gonna left click on this L, and right now both these keyframes are selected, but if I just left click and drag, I'll only have this one selected. I'm just gonna hit G and move this over to the left, meaning it will hit this final pose earlier. So now if I scroll in here and go to 50, you can see this L is already into position. So I might just use this to, just so they all don't land at the same exact moment. So it's just a little bit more dynamic and interesting. So let's go ahead and change when some of these other ones hit. So this one hits way faster. So let's maybe get this E that comes next to it. I'm gonna left click and drag. And I'm also just gonna scrub over to about when this L, so the L hits here, right there. Maybe I'll move the E. I'm gonna hit G, just move this keyframe over. Maybe I'll just move it over a little bit, just to stagger this. And maybe let's have the other L come in about a little earlier too. So I'm gonna left click on this L, left click and drag, make sure you only have this keyframe. You don't wanna move the other one. Hit G, move it over a bit. So these middle ones kind of come in first. The first L hits, the E and the L hit, and then the last two come in. So I'm gonna hold Alt, hit A to deselect. I'm just gonna hit spacebar and take a moment to look at this. And yeah, it's subtle, but I do think it's a little more interesting, and you could also play with this and take it even further, but I think that's gonna look pretty good. Go ahead and save. Just like we did in the beginning where we held our keyframes for a second, just so the viewer can see things, I wanna do this again in this position. I want the viewer to see the word unscrambled, have it pause for a second, and then unscramble itself. So let's left click on this O. And so right now, this one is about 55. And yeah, I know these are slightly different, but we want to hold for about 40 frames is what I went for. So I'm just going to drag this over to 95. And just so you know, you also can click in here to jump to a specific keyframe. And we also need this to be longer now. So let's just make this like 150 and hit enter for the moment, and to give us some room to work with. And so really, I want the exact same keyframe from there to here. So I'm just gonna hit I, and I'm just gonna go through and just do that for all of them. I, and I'm just locking in this keyframe. So now when I hit spacebar, it'll pause, fly in, pause, and then we're gonna start animating the unscramble. Okay, so I'm gonna start by unscrambling this H. So if I scrub over here, our keyframe's at 95. So I want this first animation to be about 5 frames, I believe. So I'm just gonna hit G. I'm moving this H up. So the first step is just gonna be, it's gonna pop up, fly over, and then pop down. So let's go ahead. So it's in a good position. Maybe I'll hit R to rotate a little bit just for a little visual interest. And maybe I'm gonna hit G, move it up a little bit further so it doesn't run into any of the letters as it flies by. I'm gonna zoom out for a second. And I just wanted to make sure we do have enough space that we're not gonna run into that B. I am now seeing that this S is pretty close and the O could run into it, but let's worry about that in a second. So we've moved this and rotated it. We need to lock in the keyframes. I'm gonna hit I and I. And then I'm gonna drag over another 5 frames, so that's 105. I'm gonna hit G and move it directly above where it's gonna need to go. And I'm just gonna leave the rotation, so now I'm just gonna hit I, and then move 5 more frames. And I want to get like exactly where this O is. So I'm gonna scroll in, shift middle mouse click, and I'm just gonna hit G to bring it down, R to rotate. Doesn't need to be perfect, but I'm going for a similar look, so something like that should be good. I'm gonna hit I and I. And so currently the O is in the way, so we can't really see it. But if I click and drag here, you see the H flies up, it flies over, and then pops down. So that's exactly what we want, and it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and save. Instead of just scrubbing, let's check the speed of it. So I'm gonna hit spacebar and let's play out. And I'm just gonna take note if I think the speed looks good. So it's pretty fast. So maybe 5 frames is a little too fast. So maybe, let's see. So I've got the 8, let me just make sure I have the H selected still, yep. Maybe if I just left click and drag these keyframes, you can actually hit S for scale and bring these out a bit. If you just move your mouse wheel, maybe something like that. I'm gonna hit G to move it over. And let's see, so right now, frame 95 to frame 101. I'm just gonna move it over 1 just to make it cleaner. So it does only do 5 frames to move up, but then the frame jump across is 8 frames, and that's maybe another 8. Let's just do a quick check of this. I'm gonna hit spacebar, because getting the timing right is gonna make a world of difference. I think that looks better. We probably could left click and drag and just only get this keyframe, hit G, move this over to be a little quicker. So then it's like 5 frames to move up, 8 to move over, and then 5, actually maybe I will just make it an even 5 to drop back down. So let's check this one more time, hit spacebar, I'll fly in, it holds. Yeah, I think that's better. Really, you can start tinkering with this, but I think that timing is gonna look pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and save. So now we're gonna work on the O. So I'm gonna scrub back to where the H is in position. So I'm gonna go back to frame 95, and I'm gonna left click on the O. And so we don't need this to move the exact same frame the H does. It's actually kind of a little visually interesting to maybe have it wait a second. So I'm gonna wait for those first 5 frames, I think. So I'm gonna go to frame 100, and I'm actually just gonna hit I and lock in those keyframes for the O. And then I'm gonna go 5 frames forward, and this is where I'm gonna hit G, move it out of position because I wanna make room for that H. And I'm gonna put it to about here, and maybe I'll rotate this one the other way just a teeny bit, maybe just till it moves a little more. Hit I, and then what I say, 8 frames more, so that's gonna be 112. That's where I'm gonna hit G and move it over to where this, actually that's not the right spot, move it over to over here. And I did lose where the H was, so I don't have the exact position where it was before, but that is okay. Go there, I'm gonna hit I and I, maybe I'll zoom out a little bit, give myself some more room to see here. And then 5 frames, so 117. That's where I'm gonna put it in the position. So I'm gonna hit G, put it in the position here. Again, I don't know exactly where the H was, but this will be pretty good. You can use your own judgment. And then I'm gonna hit I. I'll hold Alt, hit A to deselect, and now I'm just gonna hit spacebar to observe how both of these move. Fly in, shoot. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I like how they stagger a little bit, and I think that's good. So let's keep going with the other letters. Okay, so I'm going to scroll in here. So once the H clears the E next to it, so maybe about here, this is where I'm going to left click on the E and lock in a keyframe. Actually, I might even lock it in a frame or two earlier. Maybe like 103. Actually, no, I'm going to go up to 104. I do want to be kind of cleared of it. So I'm going to hit I and I so the E will stay in place. And I'm going to go ahead 5 frames, so 109. This is where I'm going to hit G to move it up. Maybe this one will pop out even further than the other ones did. Again, I should be doing over here just to make sure I'm not moving these things. If I middle mouse around, you can see I actually did screw up and I moved that E vertically, which I did not intend to do. So let me Control Z to undo. That's a good lesson that you always need to do it in this top view. So numpad 7, I'm in the right frame now. So yeah, make sure you're moving in this top view. So I'm gonna hit G, move this up to here. I'm gonna hit I and I, so it goes up, and then 8 frames later, actually this one, they are closer together, so it doesn't need 8 frames because the distance traveled is less. So maybe let's just go 6 frames over to get the 115. And I'm gonna hit G, put it here, have it fly over like that. Maybe actually leave it like here, so it's got more room to fly in. That could be interesting. Maybe I will rotate it a little bit, hit I, and then at frame 120, that's where I'm gonna hit G, bring it down. I'm gonna zoom in here again, maybe R to rotate, and then I'm gonna hit I and I, zoom back out, and let's give this a preview. So I'm gonna Alt A to deselect, I'm gonna hit spacebar and just see how this looks. H flies, E flies. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let me just do a quick, I'm gonna scrub through real quick. I noticed that LS earlier. Let's see if we do run into that S. So the O, it's very tight. So I'm gonna left click on this S, and again, you wanna have your mouse on this side. I'm gonna hit G just to move it, and I don't wanna move it too far because maybe it could bump into a tile somewhere else. So let me just make sure. So I moved it over a little bit. Let's just scrub back and just make sure when they fly in, no letter runs into it. Okay, so it's not running into any letters, and then when the O goes by, it does not hit it. And so now I think I could, since I've moved this S over, and I might even just move it over a little more to give myself more space. I don't want to mess up my composition, but I think that's good. I'm gonna left click on the O. I'm gonna go back to this keyframe where it hits here. And I just want to move it down a little bit. So I'm gonna hit G, just bring it down a little bit. I didn't like how close it was to these letters as it flew by. And I'm just gonna keyframe these. So now if I scrub ahead, I'm not too close to either of those letters and it hits nicely. Okay, so that's good. Let's go to the L now. So I'm gonna left click on the L. And similar thing here. So once that O flies by, I want to move the L. So at frame 109, I think I'm going to, I may even do it one before. I keep debating if I want it to move earlier or not, but no, that's good. So 109, I just want to make sure they don't collide though either. So I'm gonna hit I and I to lock in that keyframe, and then go ahead 5, so 114. This is where I'm gonna hit, and again, make sure your mouse is on the right side. Hit G, move this down to about so. Maybe rotated it just to play around a bit. Maybe go this way. I hit I, and then let's go 6 frames forward to 120. Hit G, move it over. And I don't want to go, if you go up a little bit, you could run into these. So I'm going to go down a teeny bit, I think. put it into a good position here. Hit R. I'm actually going to rotate it like a little bit this way now. Hit I, and then 5 frames forward to 125. I'm just going to zoom in here, shift middle mouse click. I'm going to hit G to bring it into position here, R to rotate it, and let's see, what do I want this final position to be? Maybe this one's a little lower than the other two, and I'm going to hit I, and hold Alt A to deselect. Let's hit spacebar and preview it. Okay, so it looks pretty good. I think the L could come in maybe even faster. Let me see. No, that does look pretty good. So they fly in fast. It's a little slow. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the L could be a little faster. I don't like how much. It seemed like it was behind the others too much. Yeah, so let's change it a little bit. So let's have. Let's see. Let's have these 2 keyframes. I'll left click and drag and get these last 2 keyframes. Let's move these over a bit. I'm hit G, move it over. And I'm just going to scrub and just see if this still, make sure nothing intersects. So it's holding, it flies up, over, and in. And I think that's going to be better. Let's hold Alt, hit A, spacebar, and let's just see this. Yeah, I think it's just a little bit better. I think it was just lagging behind a bit before. Again, this is kind of preference, so you can play around with this, but I think this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to hit spacebar. So then the last thing is, so we land, let me just left click on the L. This last one hits at frame 122. So I would say I want to hold again, just so the viewer, sees this and doesn't just like flash away really quickly. So I think the animation should have like 30 to 40 frames after this, maybe even a little longer. Let's make this actually 200. And hit enter, and let's just see what happens. So I'm gonna hold Alt A, and the thing we want to focus on, and I'm gonna click here, just jump to the beginning. The thing I want to focus on, do we think it stays at the end for the right amount of time for the viewer, that it doesn't get boring or it doesn't go away too fast? They didn't actually see what happens. So let's see it. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Maybe it could be half a second shorter, but I think that's good to just show the final shot, and the viewer gets to really, their brain gets to process what they just saw, and they see that final shot. So I think that looks pretty good. All right, and then the final really important thing we need to do is we need to think about the motion blur, because that's really going to help make this look much more interesting. So if I click on the little camera icon, there's motion blur. I can just click on that and open this up. And the shutter is going to determine how much motion blur there is. So the higher this number is, the more motion blur, the lower, the less. And also just know, if an object's moving faster, it gets more motion blur. If an object's moving slower, it gets less. So I'm going to scrub to a spot here where there's a good amount of movement. So when they're flying in here, so something like that, I know that currently there's a good amount of motion going on. So I'm going to hit F12 and get my render going. And I'm going to zoom out. You can see how much motion blur there is. And I actually want there to be a pretty dramatic amount of motion blur. And I know this L is flying fast and it doesn't have much. So I want to go ahead and change this. So I'm going to close this box. Let's drop this down to maybe 0.25, hit enter. If I hover my mouse over here, hit F12, get another render. And that's still, sorry, I went the opposite direction. Let's close it up. I want to be longer. So I actually should have made it, let's go to 1. And I'm going to hit F12. And yes, there's significantly more motion blur. I might even take this further. Let's try, and you also could do different slots. So if I change this to slot 2, close this, I could make this 1.5, and then I could hit F12, get another render. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can then switch between slot 1 and slot 2, and you can see what you think about how much motion blur there is. I'm a little torn between the two. I think both would work. I may be thinking this is enough, but I am a little tempted to go up to this much. So maybe, I don't know. I actually think I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna go back to 1. I'm happy with that, and that's what I'm going to use, but you could play with that setting and tinker with it a little more. Okay, and so by doing that render, you could see how long it's going to take you to do each frame. So you can just multiply how long that frame is going to be by 200 frames, and you can see how long it's going to take your computer. And that's where, if you click the printer icon, if it's going to take you forever and you don't think you can render it, you could drop this down to 50% and you're still going to get a nice result. But for me, my computer can render it in just a few seconds, so I'm going to leave it at 100. And if you have a great computer, you could even put this up higher and get a higher resolution result. But that's going to be good for me. And so now we just need to save this thing out. So I definitely advise you to use an image sequence, but if you don't know how to use an image sequence and you just want a video output, here's how you would do it. You would change the PNG to FMPEG video, open up encoding. I usually change the container to MP4, and I change the medium quality usually like to high quality. And you would just hit render animation. And that would just render out a completely finished video that you can use. But that's not advised because if it crashes midway through, you lose all that work. So the preferred way to do it is to use a PNG file, and then you just need to set where it's going to go. So I'm going to click on the folder. I'm going to navigate to this project, go to renders. I'll make one called animation. I'm going to go into here, go into the folder, maybe name it word scramble. I'm going to hit enter and enter. So now I have where it's going. And you can just hit render animation and it will render out your animation. And real quick, I just want to show you how you could take this even a little bit further. If you click on compositing and click on use nodes, I'm going to left click on this render layers, hit G, move it over. I'm going to hold shift, hit A, and I'm going to click in here and type in mix. And then I'm going to hover over this line and left click. And I'm going to switch this mix to an overlay. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to add in some film grain, and it's just going to make things look a little bit better and just less digital. So I'm going to hit N to close that panel, and I'm going to left click and drag, get myself a second window. I'm going to change, clicking right here, change this to a, what do I want? Image editor, I believe. And I'm going to click on the little icon there and change it to rendered result. You don't see anything for the moment, but just wait a second. And then with my mouse on the right side, I can't include this in the project files because I don't own it, but if you look in the description of this video, there's a link to this film grain, and if you download it, you just hit, let's see, oh, I gotta import it first, sorry. So I've got to go to File. So once you have it downloaded, go to File, Append, navigate to wherever you have it, which I have to remember where I have it. It's not there. Oh, there it is. Blender nodes. I need to go to film grain, go to node tree, and double click on film grain. So now it's appended in my scene. Now I can hit Shift A, click search, type in grain, hit enter, and now I have this film grain. And if I just left click, just drag this color into the image here, and then let's change this factor to like 0.5. And we're not seeing anything because we have to do a render now. So if I hit F12, I will have a render done. And you can see it added all of this film grain, and it's way too much right now. I can actually close this, and now we can see it in this window over here. So I'm going to zoom in, and yes, this is way too much. So I'm going to click in here and make it 0.1. And it just adds that little bit of grain, which just helps make it look much more realistic. So I definitely would advise you using the film grain, but it's definitely not necessary. It's just a little last touch to make it a little bit better. And so then, yeah, you just do render animation, and you are all done. All right, there you have it. I hope that you found this tutorial useful, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It's the #1 thing that motivates me to make more tutorials. And also feel free to leave me a comment. I love seeing people's finished results and what they've thought about the project, so definitely feel free to leave a comment. All right, bye.